Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the June Community Commons Changemaking Women. It's a monthly virtual conversation where we seek to build community, push us all to find more courage and drive change that we want to see in the world. And today we get to meet Asia Johnson, ensconced over there in New York. And she's going to let us in on a little bit of the pivots in her life and how she's been driving change. And I'm really most curious, Asia, about your new title, Human Rights Manager, within probably one of the largest companies on the planet. So I'm really interested in that, and perhaps more how you see the world as you've studied and delved into sustainability as well, coupled with layering over a major company. But before we turn it over to her, I want to be inclusive of everyone, and that's the point here, to kind of get to know other women and what we're doing in our own places and spaces. So please, everyone, introduce yourselves, share something you're most wanting to see change. And that could be in your own life, in your company or your work, or just in the world, something that you dream to find change about. So Stephanie, why don't we start with you, since I know you're definitely a returning candidate to this group.
Sure. My name is Stephanie Mulwan. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, like I said, and well, actually I'm in Durham right now, but I am the Director of Communications and Sustainability for Neighborhood Sun, and we're a certified B Corp and public benefit corp that is a community solar company, which just increases access to clean energy for anyone who pays an electric bill. So we do a lot of work to address energy equity and just gaps in clean energy access for low and moderate income households and renters and people in affordable housing and things like that. And one thing that I'd really like to see change, and my personal background is more in sustainability, communications, green marketing, greenwashing, things like that, as well as impact reporting. So something personally as a sustainability communicator that really just still irks me is the messaging of, doing it for the environment and things like that. And so a big hope that I have is for people to understand that what we're doing, quote unquote, for the environment is really for us, and that it's really about people and community and not about some forest far off that you've never seen. It's about the air we breathe every day and the food we need to nourish us and our infrastructure, and it's resiliency and our resiliency as communities as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Stephanie. Sarah.
Hi there, I'm Sarah Keller. I am the Digital Engagement Senior Manager at Climate Voice, and we're all about unlocking corporate influence on behalf of climate and really getting employees to get their employers to advocate for climate policy. So that's what I always think about in terms of your prompt today, and what I would most like to see, really see pro-climate companies match, what they like to say with advocating for climate policies.
And where are you stationed, located?
I am based in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Minneapolis, very nice. Casey.
Hello, everyone. My name is Casey Bartram. I'm with an organization called TIFO. We support communities impacted by mining and other forms of hazardous industry all over the world, including here in the US. We're based in Moscow, Idaho, on the traditional lands of the Nez Perce or Nimiipuu people. And I think I really like this question a lot. The first thing that comes to mind is having, as a society, but also as individuals, greater awareness and understanding of what climate equity means in many different ways, including how, for us, what we work on the most is how green energy really impacts communities in terms of where the lithium and the cobalt come from, and the tribal lands that those are on, and the communities that are really impacted by those endeavors, and trying to develop ways to make those really necessary adaptations for climate policy and adapting and reducing the impacts of climate change, finding ways to make sure that there's not communities that are negatively impacted by all of those efforts. So that's something that is always at the forefront of my mind when I'm chatting with folks about climate change. And it's great to be with you all today.
Nice to see you, Casey. Okay, well, we'll keep moving along. So, Asia, if you want to kick us off and get started, I'm fascinated by what you have to share with us today. And thanks for doing all the prep work and showing up to engage us.
Thanks, Rhonda. I'm just finishing my notes because I feel like there's just a lot of goodness here on this call, and I'm just so excited to learn from everyone on this call and just hear more about the work that you're doing. But happy to share more about what I do at Amazon. I absolutely will not take the full 30 minutes to go through the few slides I have. I'm hoping we can have more of a conversation and we could just learn from each other, but happy to share about more of the work that I'm doing and reflecting a bit more on your question about, how do I see the world and how that impacts the way that I show up in my job every day. So hopefully my presentation will give you some insight to that, but absolutely open to any questions that anyone has for me throughout the presentation, but also thereafter. So again, my name is Asia Johnson. My pronouns are she, her. And as Rhonda mentioned earlier, I am the lead for human rights at Amazon, supporting our private label business around the world. And so I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. Oh, also, I am based in Brooklyn, New York, by way of Detroit, Michigan, which is where I am from. But I met Rhonda in Scottsdale, Arizona, during the pandemic, which I will highlight in my presentation as well. Okay, so let me share my screen. The title of what I want to share today in my short little presentation here is leveraging cultural touchstones to navigate career and center purpose. So in the bio that Rhonda shared and giving a preview into what I want to talk about today, it's what I'm personally passionate about is really, looking at the work that we have ahead of us in the sustainability world. I am really excited and passionate about leveraging my purpose to essentially drive outcomes in this work, more so on the social side. So really kind of centering my purpose in order to make moves in my career that are going to help people at the end of the day. So that's really what my purpose is aligned to. So I'm just going to skip ahead to the next slide to give you more specifics on what that means to me. Alrighty, great. So what's my purpose and core intentions? So I'm an intentional bridge builder, as my bio says. I'm also a servant leader, and I'm on a mission to enable sustainable growth and prosperity for vulnerable communities through scalable and equitable solutions and accessible resources. So while a bit long-winded, this version of my purpose statement has guided the decisions I've made in the first 10 plus years of my professional career. And while I certainly believe there will be future iterations of this purpose statement, the core of who I am and my innate superpowers will always guide me down a path of impact and connectedness. And I know the service-oriented foundation that has been instilled in me through my upbringing, in particular my parents, through my childhood, that's really something that's been important to me is centering myself around people and really depending on community. That is literally how I was raised. And this foundation will continue to stabilize me and keep me centered on my purpose, even during times of doubt, which inevitably occurs through the career journey. Go to the next slide. All right, so focusing on my career at Amazon, I kind of structured this piece of my presentation in two parts. On this first slide, I'm discussing raising the bar, which is a cultural touchstone of Amazon. As previously mentioned today, I lead human rights for Amazon's private label business, which is a $6 million business that we are continuing to invest in year over year. But prior to making this career move at Amazon, I worked in a product marketing role with Amazon Web Services for about 2 years. And in that role, I built, go-to-market strategies for our biggest technology and consulting customers. I led a multi-billion-dollar marketing campaign to basically drive awareness around cloud-based solutions. I also moved to Seattle, and I met a lot of impactful and interesting people along the way during those first 2 years at Amazon. But during the pandemic, when the headquarters shut down in Seattle, I actually relocated to Arizona, and I found myself living with my parents again. I don't know how many of you can relate to that experience, but it was definitely an honor to be able to, and a privilege to be able to work remotely and to be able to spend that time with the people that I love. Also a time when I got to meet Rhonda. And like others around the world, I started to reflect a bit on my purpose, right? And what this life means during a time when so many were just devastated by what was happening around the world and by COVID. So professionally, I started to think about what I wanted to do, what I've done, including what lessons I've learned, what I've accomplished, what potentially is next, and the impact I want to have at Amazon and beyond, just in my professional career and personally, like what my impact journey is and my why. And ultimately the path to get there. And so at Amazon, there's this concept and cultural touchstone called raising the bar. And really it's a continuous improvement philosophy, but it also is rooted in our hiring practices at Amazon. So every new hire that comes in Amazon should be at least 50% or better than 50% of the employees at Amazon that are operating in that role today, to essentially raise the talent bar. But also we make hiring decisions on the basis that each employee will have long-term impact and high growth potential at the company, right? So it's not about just the short term, what can this person do for Amazon? What can this person do for my team? So we're thinking about this person's career journey and the impact they can have long-term at Amazon. So the impact I wanted to have and knew I was capable of was far-reaching and focused on delivering for vulnerable populations. Really what attracted me to coming to Amazon is thinking about the scale that Amazon has, right? And the number of people that are impacted by our global operations every single day. So I started to equate raising the bar with essentially betting on myself, right? Like, how can I make this career move at Amazon? Not necessarily having the traditional background of social responsibility, but knowing that I am an operator, I have supply chain background, and just experience that I'm able to transfer to this really important space. So I navigated the internal hiring process and made a career pivot at Amazon, landing on the next stepping stone in my impact career and aligning my skills with my purpose and personal mission, while also building depth and breadth in my leadership toolkit. So those were just things I was processing as I was navigating. How do I make this career at Amazon? What can I bring to the table, right? On this slide is actually a picture that I took late last year in our London office. It's showing a picture of my hand with 2 badges. One badge that I got at the very beginning of my career, and then a new badge picture that I took during that time in London. And really, it was just a moment that I was reflecting on how I got to where I ultimately was in that moment and the journey to get there. And so it was really just a milestone for me, and I wanted to memorialize that. Okay, next slide. So another cultural touchstone at Amazon are its leadership principles. This was something that I was actually quite skeptical of when I was interviewing at Amazon. Like, this is something, are these leadership principles something that Amazon lives and breathes by? And is it really codified in the day-to-day work? Or is this just something that we say externally, right? Or how we get people to, really just create structure around the interview process, right? But it's actually something that we live and breathe every single day, truly. And one newly added leadership principle as of 2021 is success and scale bring broad responsibility. I want to just kind of read it verbatim just so you can understand just what this actually means. So we started in a garage, but we're not there anymore. We are big, we impact the world, and we are far from perfect. We must be humble and thoughtful about even the secondary effects of our actions. Our local communities, planet, and future generations need us to be better every day. We must begin each day with the determination to make better, do better, and be better for our customers, our employees, our partners, and the world at large. And we must end every day knowing we can do even more tomorrow. leaders create more than they consume and always leave things better than how they found them. So this is a lot, right? It's a lot to kind of wrap your head around, and it's a lot to think about, like, what is my role, right, in delivering on this? So a key follow-up question that I asked to myself and have asked leaders since is, how do teams and individuals at Amazon action this commitment, right, that we've put out, publicly, right? What does that mean for us day to day? How do we embed that guidepost into our North Star goals? This is the framing that guides the work that my team does every day. So I'm on a responsible sourcing team within our private label business. And as I mentioned, I lead human rights, but we also have other single threaded leaders that lead traceability work, chemicals management, and overall operations, right? Like, how do we actually deliver these programs, right, to our end customers, which are workers in our global supply chain? Like, our North Star goal is delivering better outcomes for workers in our global value chain, and our team is constantly thinking about what each of our roles are. But pictured here on the slide is an image of an operation floor at an apparel factory that we visited in India back in October of last year. And for me, this vantage point was incredibly impactful, but it was also just like, one moment of a series of perspective building opportunities and experience during this trip. It's one thing that I always pull up whenever I have a moment of doubt, is thinking about, like, what is the true impact of my role, and who are the ones that are benefiting from what I'm trying to build, and I guess the minds and hearts that I'm trying to change every single day. So again, we traveled to India for 2 weeks last year, which was, again, really helpful and incredibly moving to have that experience, and really to really understand who our customers were, right, and the different types of communities that are impacted by the work that we do. But when we can't travel, of course, we heavily rely on our voice of customer mechanisms, which is something that we are truly seeking to do further investment in, because of the challenges of actually our team getting the opportunities to get on the grounds and actually get to experience gathering data from, having that in-person experience, right? It's incredibly impactful. It's also impactful to understand, are those mechanisms actually impactful, right? And do the ones that are, the workers that are actually using those mechanisms, do they feel empowered, right, to be able to share their experiences with us, right? So it's something that our team is constantly iterating on, and it's a really important mechanism because, what I'm truly passionate about in this role is ensuring that we are elevating and amplifying the S in ESG. As several of you mentioned on this call already, thinking about the impact of the work that we're all doing has an impact on people, right? Sustainability, like, innately means sustaining life, right? And so that is something that I am very passionate about, and I feel personally challenged to go and try to solve each and every day. And I've partnered with experts and enthusiasts across Amazon, and I'm working on building connectivity across the industry as well to go and do that work. So ultimately, it's not about, how fast we get products, but really taking care of the people throughout our supply chain and doing so responsibly. We each have a responsibility and ownership of that mission and guiding principle. So on the slide, as it mentions, each of us has a role, right? Even though this leadership principle feels very just broad and doesn't feel very personal, we each have a role to play in delivering upon this. Right. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening to a bit of my story, and I'm really excited to answer any questions that you have.
So thank you for that. So I'd love you to delve into your title, like how was that created, and what are you driving with that? I guess I'm a little unsure about what your responsibilities are and what an outcome might look like.
Sure. So outcomes for my team are ultimately like what our North Star goal, as I mentioned, is like delivering better outcomes for workers. And so it's really thinking about what policies, we have in place. It's thinking about what interventions we have in place. How do we start to, measure the impact of those interventions? How do we report on that? And as everyone knows on this call, with fast approaching regulations, what is our team? Are our business teams ready for that? How are we building? What does readiness look like for our teams, our business teams, to actually be able to provide information to us, to be able to build out reporting on the work that we're doing? So specifically, one area that we've made public commitments on is gender equality, right? And aligning that to our net zero and climate pledge goals. So for private label, it's thinking about our vast number of suppliers that we work with and thinking about, do we have the right data right now to be able to tell us diversity data, right? To know how many women workers are across our supply chain, how many of those women are in leadership positions, are suppliers leveraging digital wages, right? Which is seen as a mechanism to drive gender equality. And so it's all foundational work right now. A lot of it is baselining, right? And so a lot of my day-to-day is trying to figure out like what currently exists and baselining to figure out what we need to be able to inform the future decisions that we're making, and to bring our leaders along that journey, which, as I mentioned earlier, is about changing hearts and minds, because there's such a focus, right, on the environmental impact and carbon in particular. And so it's really thinking about and really crafting a narrative, right, that helps our leaders understand the impact of this work, to get the investment to go and deliver on those outcomes. So hopefully that answers your question, but let me know if there's anything else specifically you want to know.
Sarah, I know you have to go soon. So what thoughts, questions, or just what from your world would you weigh in on this?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your experience. I don't have any like specific question in mind. It's just been interesting to hear you talk about that side of the work, since what I'm like aware of from, my world is like focused on Amazon's climate commitments and how they can do more on that side of things. So it's just been interesting to hear another side of the work.
Yeah, would love to know are you already connected with folks at Amazon, or how are you already engaged?
We are. I know we've had meetings with your chief sustainability officer, and are connected with people at that level, but I don't know like when the last meeting we had with them was or anything like that.
Okay.
But can definitely, would be happy to connect after and talk more about that sort of work.
Okay. I think that's fascinating. Would love to hear more about, I think like the storytelling piece that you had mentioned before, right?
Yes.
And the narrative is super interesting and something that our team would love to learn more about. And I think there are a lot of people at Amazon doing this work, as you can probably imagine. And so it's like understanding who are the different partners that we're working with, right? To craft the message and communicate more about what we're doing. So great to hear you're already connected with Kara.
Yes.
Okay.
Fantastic. Stephanie, did you have a question?
Yeah, so from what you said, it also thank you so much for sharing. It was really insightful. And I appreciate you taking the time to, be here and tell us about your career path. And I loved your purpose statement. I think everyone should have, a well thought out statement like that as their North Star. And I think that's really commendable. But I was just wondering, it sounded like some of your work right now is really laying that foundation, like you said, and it seems like it's in order to then show the success of your efforts and take that to leadership for expansion or kind of scaling those impact efforts and continuing to embed that like throughout Amazon's kind of DNA, as we say. Would you say that you're working a lot on getting buy-in from leadership, or that your goals are coming kind of from the top down, and then you're just personalizing them to the communities that you're serving and like bridging that connection?
That's such a good question. I want to make sure I understand. So are you asking essentially, are the goals that I have for my role and for my team ones that are kind of bottom up versus top down? Is that kind of like the
Yes.
essence of your question? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I mean, it's, as you can probably imagine, at Amazon being such a big company, we do have like our North Star goals, like being net zero carbon by 2040, right? Based on the climate pledge, and thinking about what that actually means for our team is something that is very challenging to kind of like wrap our head around. And so we've actually have our own kind of org level goals. So our org is actually a sustainability function that's like embedded in our private label business team. So we're not actually a central, we're not in the central social responsibility team. We are actually business level sustainability operators, essentially. And so we're working very closely with our central social responsibility teams to like build a bridge between our business teams and the central teams, which is like creating a strategy around how do we actually go operationalize the strategies that our central teams are building. But what we're challenging ourselves to do is actually have a bit more thought leadership and what that actually means for Amazon's private label business. And so we've crafted our own goals based off of kind of like laddering up to what the social responsibility team is looking to do broadly across Amazon, like enterprise, or focus on human rights, right? What that actually means and like defining what that looks like and building out a 3-year strategy. So it's a little bit of both. It's like we understand there are, Amazon-wide goals that impacts our team, but we work closely with our central teams to help us to understand like what that actually means for our teams and how do we ensure that we actually are delivering outcomes for the customers in our business, right? The communities in which we are operating around the world. So that's a constant challenge for us. We're actually in the goal planning process currently, so it's something that we are constantly iterating on. But ultimately, we receive goals from the top down, but we also communicate bottom up about how we're going to actually deliver on those goals and what are other goals that we know that are kind of truly moving the needle and driving the outcomes that we're seeking to drive. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much for providing that context. And kind of as a piggyback on that, would you be willing to share any of the outcomes or how you went about deciding what those outcomes and impact metrics looked like, and if they vary, based on either the community that you're focusing on or just the industry specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share a bit about that for sure. So industry-wide, kind of obviously there's frameworks, right, in which we are operating within and we're informed by. We think about the UN guiding principles. We're obviously referring to those as we think about what does due diligence models look like at Amazon, assessing the impact of our work across the globe. So definitely informed by industry standards. And obviously we've made commitments and we are partnering, right, with industry partners and NGOs. And so, that's something that we are already doing, but of course, we're thinking about like, what does the future look like, right? And I personally am making proposals or building a proposal around, for the areas that are the most salient risk areas for our business, for a private label, where should we be making investments, right? When it comes to partnerships, when it comes to, making policies or different types of programming that we should be doing. So it's a little bit of both based on your question, but let me know if there's anything specifically that you're interested in learning more about.
Okay, thank you so much.
Casey, do you have some thoughts or just what you're seeing from all the work that you do?
I have a question that's probably more general and personal, if that's okay. And I just want to say I'm from Michigan as well, so it's always fun to meet a fellow Michigander.
Oh, nice.
I'm curious because I work for such a tiny little organization. So whenever I meet somebody who works for such a big company organization, I'm always really interested to ask about that experience in general. And I wonder, I assume before you worked for Amazon, that wasn't like your first straight out of school or training. What was that transition like for you to go from whatever you did before to working for such a massive global company, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah. I think Amazon is just such a interesting place to work. I will say that it's what I appreciate about the size of Amazon is that you can find people that are likely interested in the things that you're interested in and are there for the same reasons that you're there for. So it's beneficial in that sense, because I think finding a home for yourself at Amazon, I feel like you can find that because the company is so big and we have so many products and so many business models. So I think like that has been beneficial for me as I've been navigating, like, where do I find, how do I find a role at Amazon, right? That's really going to serve kind of my purpose and is really going to challenge me. But to take a step back and answer your first question about, what I was doing before I got to Amazon. So before Amazon, I worked several years in the energy sector. And so I was at a big company as well at that time. And I felt like my experience there, I think, has helped me to navigate Amazon, because while that company was massive, the energy company I was working for, I felt like I was able to find like my people, right? Like through that experience and like really leveraging like my kind of board of directors that I built at that company. And so I kind of replicated that model of like operating at a big company, of just like finding my board of directors and really finding kind of fulfillment in my role. And so when I got to Amazon and I was working in that first kind of, role at AWS, while impactful and exciting, and I learned a lot, I felt like I needed to find a place where I truly could like, I don't know, just kind of build right upon like what I was already doing and kind of realign, come full circle with my passion and my mission. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I have a thought because, here's Casey, she's working in the extractive community. You came from ExxonMobil and now you're like working in sustainability. So I was curious how you now look back at what you were doing before to what you're doing now. And then when you were talking about, so it's really two questions. So that's one. And the second is, in all your new initiatives that you seem to be standing up, is there a lot of thought and attention and I guess resources being thought of around the circular economy? Like, you're doing the personal brand side. Amazon is a marketplace of stuff, of many things. And I've gone down many rabbit holes on the circular economy, and to me it's just fascinating. And I'm just wondering if you all are driving some attention to that very thing, where you could sort of bring it back and bring it through. I know when I listened to the CEO of Patagonia, he said, we have 110 full-time people in the recycling, circular, upcycling kind of work, and we expect to expand that as well as kind of on the food side. So I'm curious if you all are focusing on that.
Okay, I'll start off with your first question, which is like, how do I feel about my transition from working at Exxon to Amazon now? Honestly, the reason why I left Exxon to begin with was truly reflecting on, does this company, does this role really align with my just ethically, is it aligned with what is important to me, right? And I started to reflect on that, and I was like, this is really tough because at the same time, there are opportunities to change the narrative, right? And to like actually push for change, right? Internally at a company like that. But I ultimately decided to leave and went back to get my graduate degree because I wanted to just kind of reflect on like what's next for me, like really truly feel aligned with the next step and you know, testing different things and different types of roles, different type of companies. Ultimately came to Amazon because I looked at Amazon as a company where you could be kind of an entrepreneur within a big company and you could really you know, lead from within and being able to influence the trajectory of the company and through the different types of tools that they had that employees could leverage, right, to get their voices heard, right? And again, the scale and the size and the impact of Amazon was obviously very attractive when it comes to like wanting to have an impact role. So I feel like everything, you know, I've been on this path and I know I'm continuously going to be on that path. But I feel like that experience had helped me be able to make that decision and has informed the steps that I've taken since then, right? To get to where I am today. So I'm thankful for that experience. Would I go back to work for Exxon if someone were to offer me today? Probably not. But I'm also at a company that has a lot to do in the space, right? That also, you know, needs to deliver and has a big, you know, impact and footprint. So I feel like I'm on the good side, right, of evil, for lack of better words, to be able to have that impact at Amazon. And then to answer your question about, do we have a team working on, you know, circular economy, recycling, upcycling? Yes, we do within our worldwide, you know, sustainability team. We do have teams that are focused on that work. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who exactly that is, because we do have there's quite a bit of change, right? And building out those teams and really kind of defining like what their charter is. But our team, we do have a packaging lead, right? Obviously, packaging is a huge part of waste, of recycling initiatives. And so we have someone that's leading that work right now. And so that's really interesting to hear more about kind of his thinking around, you know, the future state and like any kind of end customer, like customer facing type of work to be able to, you know, just deliver on what he's thinking more long term. But we do. So I can definitely, Rhonda, if anyone else has questions, happy to try to do some dot connecting.
Yeah, so all good stuff. Anybody else have any other questions or comments, or just because this is sharing like your pivots too. So anything?
Yeah, I'm so interested to hear about just any like immediate challenges that you each are working on in the next 3 to 6 months. Maybe.
Yeah, Casey, what are you working on with your students and all the good stuff that, I mean, she
Oh,
says
man.
she is a super tiny organization, but
We
talk
are.
about a powerhouse.
Well, we're trying to
Amazing.
grow to be a little bit less super tiny in the next 3 to 6 months. So that's pretty exciting for us just operationally, especially for me operationally, to have a few more staff on board and more of a team. We have a great network of volunteers and board members and people we engage with regularly, and I'm grateful for that. But in terms of doing the work, it'll be pretty awesome to have a few more folks on board, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So that's kind of in the works in terms of day-to-day operations. And then we've got some brand new projects all over the world. So that's always really exciting. We just applied for some more grants to do work down in Nevada, Idaho, with the Duck Valley cruise. So lots of fun things in the works. And it's all of course, related to how people are impacted, how their health specifically is impacted by environmental pollution. And that's really kind of our bread and butter. And so yeah, it's there's no shortage of work to do in that area. Yeah, I really enjoy these conversations and hearing from folks doing such diverse projects. And it's really fun for me, especially to hear from you, Asia, because you're with such a different organization than what I get to talk to on a daily basis. You know, I talk to a lot of small NGOs. I talk to a lot of folks at Doctors Without Borders. I talk to a lot of folks in the tribal community. I don't talk to a lot of corporate folks, and it's really neat to hear from you in that area, and specifically the work that you're doing there. So that's a unique opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for
Casey's
sharing.
on, and Dr. Bartram had a group of her other PhDs present at our nonprofit Community Commons about how to build trust with other communities, and it was just filled with incredible information about that whole thing going into communities of color and indigenous communities, and really thoughtful, you know, ways of showing up in the world. And so she's on tap. I've tapped her and one of her colleagues to come on to this group soon to also present. So we just need to get a month packaged up, because she's a powerhouse, and very, yeah.
I'd be
She
so-
was
I'd be
also
really
the
interested
first
in that.
nonprofit to register for Earth Gives this year. Woo, woo.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear
Yeah,
it.
so I've been meaning to email you. Our registration just opened. We did a soft open last week, and now we're kind of officially kind of putting it out there to nonprofits, and she's joined in, and she's been delightful, and the work that they do is really super important.
Well, thanks, Rhonda. I appreciate that. I would love to stay longer. I have another meeting at 1, and I need to switch the brain gears around a little bit for that one. So I need to do a little bit of light reading, kind of transition over. But thank you all so very much. This has been fantastic, and I look forward to the next time we all get to meet virtually.
Thanks, Casey.
Yes, thank you. Nice to meet you, Casey.
Nice to meet you as well. Have a great day.
Yeah, Asia, any last thoughts?
No, I mean, thank you so much, Rhonda. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining. I appreciate the questions, appreciate just the thought, appreciate you sharing more about the work that you're doing. I'm so excited to learn more about your space. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we've got lots of opportunities. We've got Bill McKibben confirmed for doing a presentation during our early giving. We're working on building on knowledge and community building programs during the early giving weeks, and I'm really excited that we've got somebody like Bill. And I'm working on a circularity, so I've been talking to nonprofits in the circularity space, and it's so fascinating. I mean, of course, I listen to the MacArthur Foundation stuff on LinkedIn, which is fascinating, but I'm learning just so much, and just having one-on-one conversations with circularity groups, and I'm looking at ways to weave in other organizations and facilitators of individuals making commitments, and thinking about, how they shop and what they look at. I mean, just somebody was talking about the making of like a sweatshirt hoodie with no metal rivets, because if you've got metal rivets, then you can't recycle it, and it takes more time. It's just like all these little things that you don't think about that I think are so fascinating, and just
it's all in the design.
Yeah,
Well,
it's really cool.
Well, Rhonda, I used to work for Don't Waste Durham, a nonprofit here in Durham, North Carolina, that is focused on circularity within the county, and they started Green to Go, which is a reusable to-go container service, and they do a lot around trying to get like reusables into school cafeterias and things like that. So if you need another resource, that could be a good one to check out, and I'd be happy to connect you if you need.
It's so fun that you bring them up. I was just on their website probably last week, and yes, they were fascinating, and I may have pinged them. I think we're going to end up with EcoCycle.
Oh, cool. Well, we've worked with them as well.
Yes, and they're one of the longest running kind of recycling places, but they do a lot of like education. And yet I would love the Durham piece in there to like do the facilitation of the breakout. So we're not focusing on just one, that we amplify community, that it's not just about one nonprofit, but it's about the many, and the spaces and places that they show up in. And I just think that would be really cool. So if you want to ping them and go, hey, I know Rhonda, like be part of this thing.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. Also, extended producer responsibility would be a really exciting topic, like along.
Extended producer responsibility.
Yeah, so just the concept of the company producing the waste, essentially facilitating its disposal process. So take back programs for when you're, done with your pair of shoes, things like that, or making sure that you're going to give people the resources they need to get rid of the waste properly, or get it to somewhere it can be reused.
Yeah, I had reached out to Souls for Souls. I think they're based in Tennessee, and they are a nonprofit as a social enterprise. And I wanted him to come on to talk to the nonprofit groups about social enterprise, like how do you create your own funding source, outside of receiving donations. But Asia, that's why I asked you about the circularity, because whether you've got, I think there's a Canadian company that's taking in like batteries and, different things that we're going to, the repurposing of lithium and all of it. I mean, Amazon, it seems like there's just this whole huge ecosystem potential of like partnering in or whatever. I mean, I've got a gal who's starting up a nonprofit called Pickleball for Good. And she wants to do like recycling for like pickleball. I'm like, okay, but it's like all these multiples of things where you drop your stuff versus like, could there be a one space? I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating. And she's going to participate in Earth Gives Day, which I think is going to be cool because they're doing teams and groups all over the world, to not just play the game, but to actually give forward. I hate saying give back. Give forward, to create the sustainability. So anyway, there's ideas there, Asia.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure
no loss for ideas, eh? Yeah.
I know there's so many. No, I mean, this is really helpful though. I love listening and hearing what other folks are doing and just the resources out there, because you just never know. We do have teams. Amazon's massive, so it feels like you don't know everything that's going on, but that's also, it's not beneficial, right? To not be in the know, right? As a sustainability function at Amazon, right? So we need to do a better job at internal communications, right? About the work that we're doing, because also our employees are customers too, right? And they're also our biggest advocates for the work and should feel empowered to be able to tell that story. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do internally.
And be part of it, to drive
and be part of it,
that
100%.
they,
100%.
see out there, whether it's shipping or, whatever it is. And tomorrow on the nonprofit side, we've got our community commons session, and it's on, of course, Stephanie, you're going to be intrigued by this, the state of climate media coverage. And we've got a meteorologist, a print reporter, an NPR reporter, and a nonprofit comms person who works with journalists to integrate science and climate related things. And I don't know if you saw that meteorologist, I think he was in Iowa, who left his job because he had woven in climate change to his weather reports, and he was harassed for it. And he got
I think I saw that.
Yeah. So it's
but
really
he left, he's leaving media though, right? To start up a whole kind of effort around climate change, right?
Well, there's so many places he could go because there's so many people, like, Stephanie spoke eloquently about the messaging gaps and opportunities. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, because you see mainstream media popping up desks around climate coverage and sustainability and all of that. But how are they integrating language, and who are they getting as readers and viewers? Because is it just the people who are in the space, or are they reaching kind of the broader community? So anyway, interesting stuff going on. So Asia, it's been delightful. I missed you and
Yeah.
miss your energy, but I know you're out there doing good in the world. And don't be a stranger. And thanks for all you
Absolutely
do.
not. Yes, thank
Yeah,
you so
and
much.
I just want to commend you on, taking charge of your career and making that probably scary pivot, from the fossil fuel industry to Amazon and then to sustainability. Like, I just think that's a beautiful journey. And I hope that we get everyone who, all the amazing talent that worked for these industries that, we don't want to be a part of anymore. Like, I hope we get them all onto our side because that, they
Yeah.
were doing amazing work and we just need it to be in the direction of the future that's better for all of us. So I think it's
Well,
amazing
thank you.
that you
Thank
made
you
that
so
happen for
much.
yourself. Yeah, seriously.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I agree. It's a multidisciplinary challenge for all of us, right? We need everyone to be involved. So I appreciate that. It's great to
This
be
wraps
connected.
up
I'm gonna
our.
reach out on LinkedIn, Stephanie.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
that
great.
would be great.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's what this is all about. So thanks very much for being here and sharing information for our June Community Commons Changemakers. Wishing all of you just great joy and great impact in your pivots and your courage out there in the world. So thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Stephanie.
All right,
Good rest
thank
of your
y'all.
day.
Thanks, Rhonda, for making the space too.